Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. We're getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney for free, which I think is a delightful thing. I recently, I think yesterday, put out a video saying, hey, I've lost a couple of questions. My system to make sure that I hold on to your questions is not the best. I actually just open tabs in my browser and leave it scrolled to your question when I want to answer your question and make a video for you. And the downside to that is if my computer updates and restarts, I lose your question. And you might say to yourself, Vince, that's a really stupid system. I would say to you, yes, I agree. All right, so I have a question here from Jay Hefner, who's asked a couple different questions of the channel, I believe. This question was asked 9 days ago, and it was posted on our video, posted August 5th. The video that it was posted. The question was posted 9 days ago. Our video went up on August 5th of 2022, and that video was entitled, There's Some Really Good Non-Attorney YouTube Channels About Employment Law. But let's talk about it. Because some of those channels, 90% good, 80% good. The problem is that last 10, 20% that's not good can sink a case or lead you to make questionable decisions. So that's the topic for that particular video. Now, the question from Jay Hefner. Let's read it into the record. If a company has a culture of discrimination and several members of a protected class want to seek counsel from an attorney, how many people would they need to file a class action for discrimination? What type of evidence would they need for a class action? Also, and this is a very astute question, would it be wise to do a class action or file several clients under the same umbrella? Okay, great question. There's 3 ways to look at this. We'll answer the easiest part of this first. A class action, there's no hard and fast number about how many you need. Generally, it's going to be super hard to get class certification if you have less than 20 members. Now, in reality, the path to the most likely class certification is to have dozens of members for your class. Now, the other path, there's 2 other paths, would be, as you kind of noted in your question, to have a collective action where you have multiple plaintiffs, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever it is, in one action, but it's not a class action. And then the last path forward would be to file a bunch of individual actions against the employer for each plaintiff with their individual claims, but having you all cooperate and collaborate and corroborate each other. Okay? Now let's talk about the why. Why would you choose one or the other? The power of class action is generally going to be the opt-in. If you get a class certification, you have a class action going, you can have people automatically opted in certain situations to your case unless they actively opt out. This can create a huge class of plaintiffs. That's great. It's really amazing. It puts a lot of pressure on the employer, and it makes a lot of money for the attorney. But the individual plaintiffs tend to get screwed hard in very bad ways. Like, a lot of these, look around. I'm sure maybe you've gotten a check in the mail from a class action that you were opted into because of like Facebook or something like that, or your ISP, or you bought a Toyota and their brakes didn't work and nothing happened to you, but you got opted into a class action, you made some money. I think you'll notice that those amounts that you made were not large. That's worth noting, because generally in a class action, the attorneys make huge sums of money. And the plaintiffs, the individuals who actually have the claims, tend not to do very well at all. Not great. Not a great result. So I would not almost ever, unless you have a wage claim. Unpaid wages, unpaid overtime, misclassification, stuff like that. those make great class actions because everybody knows exactly what their damages are, and you can go through and prove it. So it can be really, really helpful. So definitely wage cases, I definitely heavily favor class action. Collective action. Now, this is you got 4, 6, 8, whatever it is, plaintiffs together in one case, each having their individual claims in that case. Problems arise. Because although everybody's cooperating and collaborating, everyone's going to have different goals, right? I've had this in a variety of cases. I had a really good case years ago, and I think we had like 6 claimants, and 3 or 4 of the claimants wanted to hold out. I think they wanted like $800,000 apiece, and I agreed with them. I thought they were being wise. And then we had a gentleman who desperately needed money and was willing to settle his case for like, I think it was like $100,000. And that's what he needed, right? It's his case. It's his claims. That's what he needed. So that's the goal. That's what you have to do if you're a good attorney and you help your clients. Like, there's no like, oh, it's not enough. Like, I think you should get more, but if that's what you need, if that's what you're telling me to do, I'm going to do that, right? But here's the deal. The employer knew he needed money. We're not going to get into why he needed money. It's for another day, well, not for discussion at all, frankly, because it's his business. Now, the employer knew he needed money. And they knew if they told him, hey, we would give you that money, but only if you get everybody else to settle. So you got this guy who desperately needs money for good and important reasons, and he's running around in the background of your collective action, begging, borrowing, manipulating, cajoling, arguing, debating, threatening everybody else who's a plaintiff, trying to get them to settle their case for less so he can get his money sooner. Gotta tell you, not a good way to spend a half a year. That was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. So these collective actions, they can be pretty powerful, but defense attorneys are very clever, and they will try to do things in technically ethical and legal ways to put pressure and get plaintiffs to put pressure on each other. So what I've arrived at, for 2 reasons, is that I like to bring individual claims for everyone. And other attorneys would say to me, but Vince, that sounds incredibly expensive for you. That's not efficient at all. You must spend tons of money. Yeah, I do. And that's okay, because here's the flip side of that. If you're opening 6 individual cases, that's going to cost me a whole bunch of money. But it's, 1, my job to fund those cases. 2, going to cost the defense a whole bunch of money too, and they cost a lot more than it does for me to run a case, right? So if it's costing me 20, 40 grand a case to run these cases, these 6 individual cases, what's it costing them to defend it? 100, 200, 300 per case? If it goes to trial, maybe? Not unheard of. Very common, right? So I've multiplied the pressure. I think of it as, you ever see the video? This is like when I was a kid and they had the first like desert storm. There was these missiles, and the missiles would go, and this is very sad. I don't like watching people get blown up, but as a kid, I was watching this, and the missiles would go, and then at the end, they like split into a bunch of warheads, and all the warheads explode separately, creating havoc. And I kind of look at this as like, you have all the warheads or all the different cases, and they create havoc. But you maintain good relationships between all of your claimants as best you can, and they corroborate and collaborate and help each other. So you maintain the strengths of the collective action while avoiding the downfall of the class action in that plaintiffs don't get much. And you go over here and you have these individual cases and you create all these additional advantages. So to my mind, I embrace the incredible inefficiency and low quality of life involved with running 6 individual cases rather than having a collective action for 6 people. And it really does a lot to mitigate this hey, we're not going to settle with you if you don't get these other guys to settle situation that crops up way too often. And there's legal reasons why that's an even bigger problem that may not be obviously apparent to the channel. Like if you have a client, let's say you're representing 2 different people, and all of a sudden one of your clients has a vastly different goal than your other client. In fact, their goals are at odds. They want to do different things with their cases. Well, you just had an ethical conflict arise. And that's going to create problems. You're going to have to potentially create separate teams that are walled off from each other. Or you're going to have to ship one of the claims to another firm because you can't represent 2 people with different interests because it makes your marching orders unclear. Because what are you going to do? Who are you going to choose to help? Whose desired outcome are you going to choose to fight for when you owe both people the same duty of loyalty? You have to do what both people want, but they want different things. Who do you choose? Oh, yeah, tough. No answers there, huh? So what do? Create 2 teams who are not allowed to talk to each other about the case? That sucks because their ability to cooperate and collaborate and corroborate has been lessened because they're walled off from each other. And when they get together at the firm case meeting, they don't really get to communicate all that clearly about the cases anymore because they have to be walled off because their clients have separate interests. Also, it's entirely possible one of the clients might be like, I don't want that guy here. He wants different things than me. I don't want to waive this conflict. Get him a different firm. It happens. It's not even that unreasonable. It's a little unreasonable, but it's also their right. So now you got to tell this person, hey, and who do you choose? Who do you choose to ship out? Because both clients probably want to stay with your firm, right? Both clients are like, no, I like it here. I like working with you guys. And the firm's like, well, but one of you have to go. Which one? It's a nightmare. And that's what defense attorneys are trying to do. They're trying to drive that wedge. It's a wedge between the plaintiffs. It's a wedge between the firm. And they know it. And they're smart about it. So collective actions are ill-advised, in my opinion, for a variety of reasons, both defensive and offensive in nature. And Jay Hefner, I'm sorry this video came late, but I hope it was helpful. If it was helpful, like and subscribe. It helps me to help more people just like you.